In this final outcome, we look at what happens after the plan is written, the messy human business of actually making a strategy work. As you'll see, plenty of brilliant strategies stumble not in the thinking, but in the doing. It's tempting to think the hard part is deciding on a strategy, but setting one is really only the start. The harder task is putting it into practice, and a surprising number of good strategies fail somewhere in the implementation. All sorts of factors influence whether a firm actually hits its objectives, which is why this outcome asks you to evaluate how different approaches affect success. As the saying goes, a strategy is only as good as your ability to deliver it, something Marks and Spencer learned through years of attempted turnarounds. Let's begin with the forces that come largely from outside the business. A resistant corporate culture can quietly block change. Conflict between stakeholders with opposing aims can delay or derail plans. And shifts in the wider economy, recession, inflation, or rising interest rates can pull the rug out entirely. When the cost of living squeeze hit, many retailers found an ambitious growth objective suddenly looked unrealistic as customers reined in their spending. Just as important are the factors inside the firm's own walls. Motivated staff drive change forward, while demotivated ones quietly resist it. Low productivity makes every objective slower and costlier to reach. Then there's the availability of finance. Plans need funding, and shortages stall investment, and outdated IT systems can hold delivery back too. The encouraging thing is that these internal factors are within the firm's control, and they often decide whether a strategy succeeds. If we set these factors side by side, the pattern is clear. A supportive culture speeds change, while a rigid one blocks it. Stakeholder opposition can delay or reshape plans, and an economic downturn cuts both demand and available finance. Motivated staff deliver where low morale resists, funding gaps stall investment, and modern IT enables efficient delivery. Notice how most of these sit inside the business, which is rather good news. It means much of a strategy's fate is genuinely in the firm's own hands. In reality, these factors rarely arrive one at a time. Picture a manufacturer aiming to expand output by 30% within a year. Money is tight, so new machinery has to be leased rather than bought. Staff are anxious about the faster pace, so motivation dips, and then interest rates rise, pushing up borrowing costs. Stack those together, and the objective becomes far harder to reach, often forcing the firm to scale its ambitions back. Of all these influences, culture is one of the strongest. A workforce that fears change can resist new objectives without ever openly refusing, simply slowing everything down. The way managers reduce that resistance is by explaining the reasons, involving people and training them properly. Think of staff used to paper processes suddenly facing a new IT system, who will dig their heels in unless they're supported and shown the benefits. Winning people over to the strategy is often every bit as important as the strategy itself. Businesses don't all make strategic decisions the same way. Some are top-down, where leaders set the strategy and pass it down for staff to follow. Others are bottom-up, where staff are involved and ideas flow upward, building genuine commitment. There's also the question of whether decisions are data-led, grounded in analysis, or more intuitive, resting on experience and judgment. Most firms blend these, but the balance they strike says a lot about them. Let's weigh the two main approaches. Top-down, or directive, decision-making is fast, clear, and consistent, with strong central control, but staff can feel excluded and push back. Bottom-up, or participative, decision-making builds commitment and taps frontline knowledge, though it's slower and can lack clear direction. You can see the contrast between a founder-led firm like Amazon in its early days, driving hard from the top, and a worker-owned business like the John Lewis Partnership, which deliberately draws ideas up from its partners. So which wins? Honestly, neither. It depends entirely on the situation. Top-down suits a crisis that needs fast, decisive action, while bottom-up suits changes that live or die on staff buy-in, like adopting new ways of working. The judgment you're asked to make is about fit. The approach has to match the objective, the culture, and the time available. Remember that this criterion asks you to evaluate, so weigh both sides and reach a reasoned conclusion rather than just describing them. Now to two very different strategic directions, starting with growth. Growth means expanding the business, more sales, sites, markets, or staff. And it can be organic, through internal expansion, or external, through mergers and takeovers. Firms usually pursue it for higher profit, greater market share, and a stronger reputation. Greggs is a fine example of steady organic growth, opening new shops year after year across the UK. Growth brings real rewards, but it isn't all upside. On the benefit side, you gain efficiency from economies of scale, higher revenue and profit, positive publicity, and more opportunities for staff. But the challenges are just as real. Coordination gets harder, and dice economies can creep in. A distinct culture can be diluted or clash after a takeover. And there's the danger of over-trading, growing faster than your cash can support. Quality and customer service can slip too, as some fast-expanding chains have found to their cost. The opposite direction is retrenchment, deliberately reducing the size or scope of a business. That might mean closing sites, cutting product lines, selling off divisions, or reducing staff. It's used to cut costs, refocus on core strengths, or simply survive a downturn. When a struggling retailer closes loss-making stores to concentrate on its profitable ones and its online sales, that's retrenchment doing its job. Retrenchment carries its own balance of gains and pains. It lowers costs and improves cash flow, lets a business refocus on its most profitable areas, and can genuinely protect its survival. But redundancies damage morale. You lose skills, capacity, and market share. And there's often negative publicity to weather, plus it's much harder to grow again once you've shrunk. It's a strategy of last resort for many firms, not a first choice. Let's watch retrenchment unfold. Imagine a struggling high street retailer that decides to shrink in order to survive. It closes its least profitable stores and drops its weakest ranges, and before long costs and losses fall, easing the cash flow pressure in the short term. But the redundancies hit staff morale and draw critical press coverage. And while the smaller, more focused business is steadier, it now faces the challenge of rebuilding in order to grow again, a path Debenhams and others walked before running out of road. Putting the two side by side, neither is automatically the right answer. Growth can lift profit and efficiency, but risks overstretch and a diluted culture. Retrenchment can restore stability, but bruises morale and erodes future capacity. The right choice hinges on market conditions, available finance, and the firm's own objectives. The judgment to take away is that success depends not on the label, but on the timing, the resources, and how well the change is actually managed. So how does a business tilt the odds in its favor? It starts by setting clear, realistic, measurable objectives that staff genuinely understand, then communicates the strategy and involves people to build commitment. It secures the finance, the people, and the technology it needs before starting rather than halfway through. And crucially, it monitors progress and stays ready to adapt as circumstances shift, because both the internal and external picture will keep changing. Let's bring this final outcome together. We've seen that setting a strategy is far easier than implementing it, and that both external factors, culture, stakeholder conflict, the economy, and internal ones, motivation, productivity, finance, and IT, shape whether it succeeds. Different approaches to decision-making, top-down or bottom-up, data-led or intuitive, each have their strengths, with the best fit depending on the situation. And we weighed growth with its efficiency gains and its risk of overstretch against retrenchment, which cuts costs but harms morale, concluding that each strategy must be judged against the firm's own circumstances. That completes the unit, and with it the journey from what strategy is, through the models that shape it, to the real challenges of putting it into practice. To take your understanding further, the further reading offers some excellent routes in: Johnson and colleagues' Exploring Strategy and Lynch's Strategic Management both explore implementation and change in depth. The case studies on the Greggs growth story and the Marks and Spencer turnaround are especially worth exploring, as they show these very tensions playing out in real companies. Do browse the ebooks and journals on the Moodle, and as you prepare your assignment, keep asking not just what a firm should do, but how well it could actually deliver it.